Okay, it's 7:20. Do we start? Okay. So good evening, everyone, and good morning to the people in the other time zones. Welcome to the third session of the Positive Psychology Global online courses offered by Tsinghua University. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation here, so we decided to change all the courses to online mode. So we will no longer have the offline course in the Tsinghua campus, which is good, so that we have more people that we can communicate with online. So today we're going to talk about character strength and virtues. This is a foundation of positive psychology, and we will talk about four things. First, what is character strength and virtue, and what are these? What kind of character strength are there? Secondly, how can we find my character strength? How do I know what character strength I have before I can use them, right? And the third one, why do character strength matter? Why do we have to spend one course on one class on character strength? And finally, how to use them? How to use character strength to make you happier and have a more flourishing life. So first, before we talk about what are character strengths, I need to go back to a slide that we talked about last week. Dr. Happiness at dinner actually gave a talk in the MAPP, which is Master of Applied Positive Psychology Summit in Pennsylvania University. And he emphasized that positive psychology is broader than the positive psychology that we think. In addition to gratitude, virtue, SWB, etc., he also thinks that we also need to study altruism, self-regulation, etc. And so this actually reflects two different kinds of approach of happiness, or what positive psychology should study. So basically, if we put all of these things together in the left column and in the right column, that is what constitutes a good life. So he argued that positive psychology should study everything that can make a good life, not just some subjective feelings. So this is actually also what Kai Ping talked about in the first session. He used the example of the psychologist Christopher Peterson. He wrote the book, Pursuing the Good Life. So what is a good life in his mind? He would think love, play, service, and meaning are the four pillars of good life. So this is actually a different kind of views of what good life is from the subjective well-being kind of point of view. So actually, in 2010, when he came to University of Pennsylvania to give us that class, it happened that the university that he was actually teaching at that time, the University of Michigan, asked Peterson to design a theme for their university for that semester. And we all thought that he would design something like happiness or well-being, right? This is what positive psychology typically talk about. Hey, what can make you happier? But actually, no, instead, he designed the theme as what makes life worth living. So this is a question that he posted to all the students in Michigan University. You have to think, what makes your life worth living? And what is the purpose of your life in this world? What is the ultimate goal of your life here? So he actually designed a t-shirt, just put that question on the t-shirt and ask people to fill the blank in the right space there. And some people say meaning. Some people say service, some people would say love, some people would say family, some would say music, some would say science, and some people just joke. They're saying, okay, my cat makes my life worth living, or Britney Spears, Michael Jackson makes my life worth living. It's fine, whatever you think makes your life worth living is a good answer. So this actually inspired us. So when I went back to China, we also designed a t-shirt, just like that one in Chinese. So I hope you guys can see it. So, this is a blank that people can fill in, and that's the Chinese, pretty much the same thing. What makes your life worth living? So this is how we kind of remember him, his legacy. We always need to think about this question. What am I doing here in this world? If you are going to die tomorrow, do you think today is a fulfilling day? So this is the ultimate question that Chris Peterson posted to us. So this actually is the eudaimonia way of thinking about life. So if we trace back to ancient Greece, there were already two schools of philosophy. They have different views on what is a good life. So philosophers like Epicurus, they would think good life is hedonia. And hedon is the ancient Greek for pleasure. So we know the word hedonism, right? So people who pursue pleasure, the mind pleasure and mainly bodily pleasure, food or sex or clothes or status, etc. As long as I can enjoy myself, okay, it's fine. My life is good. But the school of Aristotle didn't agree with that. They argued that a good life is called eudaimonia. You actually means good, and demo means fate. So what is a good fate? Aristotle believes it came from virtues. So you have to find your virtues and improve them to make yourself a better person. And reflection, you have to think about yourself. You have to contemplate on your life, what is good, what is bad, and you consciously decide what to do. And finally, discipline. You have to self-regulate yourself. Don't indulge yourself. You have to live a life that can be dedicated to your goal rather than just put yourself into a bunch of pleasure. So that was the origins of two different schools of what constituted good life. For hedonia, the hedonic way of studying psychology is just to define happiness as subjective well-being. We talked about that last week. It's positive emotion minus negative emotion plus life satisfaction. They're all subjective feelings and evaluations. But for eudaimonia, it's different. They just pursue well-being. So it's not just subjective, it's also objective. And there are different kinds of models. For example, Peterson would think it's love, service, play, and meaning. And Riff and Kios, two very famous psychologists, they argued that well-being consisted of autonomy, growth, self-growth. You are growing to become a better person. And self-acceptance, you are accepting yourself. You don't fight yourself. And life goals, you have very valuable goals to pursue. And mastery, you can change the world. You have mastery of skills and the environment. And finally, positive interpersonal relationships. So that's what Riff and Kios argued. And there are different psychologists who argue different kind of constructs of well-being. For example, here we're going to introduce what Marty Seligman, as we know, the founder of positive psychology, he wrote in the book Flourish that well-being actually have 5 pillars, and he called it the PERMA theory, because these 5 words, the acronym is PERMA. So they are positive emotion. This is, very important pillar of happiness. So I feel good, right? And engagement, that means I'm engaged in something so much that I forget everything else. That's kind of like the state of flow. And I do this thing because it brings enormous intrinsic pleasure. Not because I do it, I can make money, or people would praise me, or people will not criticize me, etc. I do it because I enjoy it. I'm engaged to it. Okay, and the relationship, that's easy to understand. We talked about last week that the factor that can make people happier most is the interpersonal relationship. And meaning, what gives you meaning of life, and what makes your life worth living? That, question from Chris Peterson. And finally, accomplishment, which means, okay, I cannot just imagine, okay, I have bunch of positive emotion, engagement, relationship, and meaning. You have to really do something. You have to leave a legacy to the world. You have to change the world and yourself. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't mean, okay, I have to make a lot of money. I have to be a very high rank in the society. I have to be a government official, etc. No, but you have to do something. You have to make contribution to the world as much as you can. For example, if a teacher, he or she may have only changed 100 students' knowledge. He made their lives slightly better. Then that's an accomplishment. And a doctor, right? He cured some people's diseases, maybe not, deadly disease like a cancer. He just see other people's like, cold, etc. But that's still an accomplishment. After all, you have to do something. You have to make the world different. So that is the 5th pillar of well-being. And that's the PERMA theory. But if we look at this building of well-being, you will notice that they are built on the foundation of strengths and virtues. Because Martin Seligman believes that all these 5 pillars are not from, imagination, or not from anything else, but from strengths and virtues, which means you have to use your strength to get positive emotion. And when you use your strength, you will have more engagement. You will have better relationship. You will find the meaning of life, and you will make more contribution and accomplishment to the world. So that's why the strength and the virtues are so important. And why did he emphasize so much on the strengths and virtues? Here's actually a little story that he told us, and he also wrote that in his book Authentic Happiness. It's a very interesting story. So when Marty Seligman was elected the president of the American Psychologist Association, which is huge honor, but it's also huge pressure because he was required to propose a new direction or new mission in his role. So when he was the president, he had to tell people, okay, I want to lead the association. Actually, I want to lead the American psychologists to that direction. But this is very difficult, right? Because pretty much all the possible directions have been proposed by the past presidents. And Marty actually gave himself an additional challenge. Okay, since he was the president in 1999, so he wanted to propose something that's big enough that it can last 100 years, because that's the beginning of a new century, right? Actually, it's the beginning of a new millennium, so this new direction should last 1,000 years. It's not just for 1 year. So he thought and thought and thought about it. And one day, actually, it happened that he was doing his work in his rose garden. So this is his rose garden at his home. And he liked to take care of his roses. And when he was working there, he had a daughter whose name is Nikki. She was only 5 years old at that time. And she came and said, "Daddy, can I work with you?" Marty was pretty happy. He was like, "Yeah, of course, let's work together." But actually, 5 years old girl, I don't know about you guys, but I have a 5 years old girl who just turned 6 this semester. When she said she wanted to help you, actually, she was, making all the damages. And Nikki was no exception. She was actually throwing the rose weed into the sky and dance and sun there. So Marty was pretty annoyed, and he actually scolded Nikki and told her to go away. And Nikki went away, very depressed and sad. And then Marty finally calmed down and resumed his work. But then about like 10 minutes later, Nikki came back and said, "Daddy, can I talk to you?" Marty said, "Okay, let's talk." And Nikki said, "Do you remember me between 3 years old and 5 years old? So I was a whiner. I whined about everything. She was not satisfied with anything. And I whined a lot. But on my birthday, on my fifth birthday, I made a decision. I decided not to whine anymore. That was the toughest decision I ever made. But as you can see, I stopped whining now. And why can't you stop being such a grump?" So Marty Seligman was shocked. First of all, he realized, okay, he was not a good daddy, right? He was such a bad-tempered and grump. So always, often, had an ill temper. Okay, so he realized that. But more importantly, as he wrote in the Authentic Happiness book, he realized that raising Nikki, and actually any child, is not about correcting her shortcomings. I will read the whole part because it's very important. She could do that herself. Rather, my purpose in raising her was to nurture this precocious strength she had displayed and help her to mold her life around it. Because as we can see, Marty didn't tell Nikki, okay, you should stop whining, right? You should make a decision about your life. You should lead your life yourself rather than let it led by your parents. But she had this natural tendency to become better, to exhibit this strength. So Marty wrote, "Such a strength, fully grown, would be a buffer against her weakness and against the storms of life that would inevitably come her way. Raising child, I knew now, was far more than just fixing what was wrong with them. It was about identifying and amplifying their strengths and virtues, and helping them find the niche where they can live these positive traits to the fullest." Okay, I can see someone is talking. Do they have a question? Tracker, do you have a question or? Okay. So he asked, can there be a psychological science that is about the best things in life? Can there be a classification of the strengths and the virtues that make life worth living? See, so he believed that what makes life worth living? It's the strength and the virtues. If you use your strength and virtues, you will feel your life fulfilled. So he kept asking, can parents and teachers use this science to raise strong, resilient children ready to take their place in a world in which more opportunities for fulfillment are available? Can adults teach themselves better ways to happiness and fulfillment? So it's not just for kids, it's also for the adults. And he realized that the vast psychological literature on suffering is not very applicable to Nikki. Because if we look at the, psychology literature before 1990s, they're pretty much, most of them are on suffering and mental diseases and mental disorders and, children's problems. So when we look at the psychology literature on how to raise a child, it's often about how to fix their problems. But Seligman realized that a better psychology for Nikki and children everywhere will view positive motivations, for example, loving kindness, competence, choice, and respect for life, as being just as authentic as the darker motives, because they are both real existence, the brighter side and the darker side. So it will inquire about such positive feelings as satisfaction, happiness, and hope. It will ask how children can acquire the strengths and virtues whose exercise leads to these positive feelings. It will ask about the positive institutions, such as strong families, democracy, a broad moral circle that promote these strengths and virtues. It will guide us all along better paths to the good life. So just inspired by her daughter Nikki's talk, he realized, okay, actually people have a natural born tendency to be better, and we should study the better side of a human mind so that people can fully flourish. And that is the origin of positive psychology. So he used this as the theme of his presidency. And by the way, if you wonder what happened to Nikki later, the good news is that she gave a birth to a child. That was her first child. It was a very painful labor. It lasted 24 hours. But then 6 hours later, she defended her PhD dissertation and became a doctor in psychology. And that was really amazing, as Marty actually wrote an email to us and said he never knew anyone who did that, defended her PhD dissertation 6 hours after labor. And her dissertation thesis, in case you are interested, actually is overuse and underuse of character strengths in borderline personality disorder. So actually, this is exactly Nikki's passion. She wanted to know why people, what's the role of character strength in borderline personality disorder. And she argued that both overuse and underuse can be damaging. So that is the, she actually looks like she got the same interest from her father, to study character strength. So Marty Seligman, after he started the positive psychology movement, one of the first things he did was to ask Chris Peterson to work together with him and compiled a book called, as he said in The Authentic Happiness, a classification of character strengths and virtues. So that this is the positive version of DSM-5. For those people who are familiar with psychology, you probably heard of the book. It's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So it's DSM of mental disorders. And I actually read this book very quickly, skimmed of it. And this book had a magic. So before you read it, so for example, before I read it, I thought, okay, I was a normal person, all right? I'm a good person. But after I finished that book, I realized that actually I was a hidden schizophrenia and anti-social freak. Anyway, so when you read all the descriptions of the mental disorders, you would put these labels kind of on yourself. Okay, looks like this one fits me. Okay, looks like that one fits me. All right, so I am a schizophrenia. All right, so I'm antisocial. So this is what we call the labeling effect. When you see the description of people's personality, you often kind of put yourself onto it. And this is why those, zodiac or all the other not so scientific psychological things going on, like superstition, because people often use those kind of things to kind of put labels on yourselves. So Marty Seligman and Chris Peterson wanted to do exactly the opposite. So they did this character strength and virtues book, which is great because it did exactly what they expected. When you read this book, you would find, okay, actually, I have this strength, I have that strength. My virtue is strong. No, so finally, they investigated all the major cultures. For example, the Chinese culture, the Japanese culture, the Eastern European culture, the Western European culture, the Middle East culture, the Jewish culture, and all the Indian culture. And they asked one question when they read the classics in those cultures. What are the virtues that you value? And finally, they found the 6 virtues that every culture values. They are wisdom and knowledge, humanity, justice, temperance, transcendence, and courage. Sorry. And under each virtue, they found 3 to 5 character strengths under them, and the total is 24 character strengths. So here they are. For example, wisdom and knowledge, there are 5 of them. Love of learning and perspective. So you have a different perspective from other people. When other people cannot resolve the problem or they cannot see the essence of a problem, you can often see it and help other people. Other people often come to you for suggestions and judgment. You can make good decisions. Creativity, we know that, curiosity. So this 24 character strengths. And what are the criteria of selecting these 24 character strengths? So basically, Marty Seligman and Chris Peterson, they decided that all these strengths have to be valuable, which means they have to be good. And secondly, they have to be ends rather than means, which means why do we, for example, if we look at humanity, why do we love other people? It's not because if we love other people, then other people will give us, benefits. Why are we kind? It's because kind is good, love is good, social intelligence is good. So they are valuable. So we pursue them so that this is the meaning of our life. So these two are the biggest difference between character strength and other strengths. For example, Gallup strengths. Some of you might be familiar with the strengths proposed by Gallup. This is a consulting company, and they found that this strengths would help people succeed in a company. But these are the means, right? If we look at them, so for example, the executing virtues, we don't executing for executing's purpose, right? We executing because it can make more money. And so these are not the end itself. So these are the difference. And the Gallup strengths are not necessarily good, which means morally valuable, but all the character strengths are morally valuable. And these strengths are more than absence of problems. For example, love doesn't just mean one person is not cruel. Okay, I never killed a person. That doesn't mean I'm kind or love. I have to really give. I really help other people. I really empathize with other people. That means I'm kind, right? So this is way more than just absence of problems. And it inspires rather than hinder others. For example, humor, that's in transcendence. That means when you use this strength, you make people happier, you make people feel funny and feel good. It's different from sarcasm, which means when you use this, actually people will feel they are being laughed about. You are laughing at them, so they will not feel good. And same thing for example, leadership. Leadership, when you lead, people follow you because you inspire them, they admire you, they trust you, they believe that you can lead them to a better direction. Rather than you use authority, right? You become a authoritative tyrant. Then that's not leadership, right? That's wrong. So when we use strength, that inspires rather than hinders other people. And they are always promoted by social institutes. For example, schools. If we look at all these character strengths, they are promoted by schools, and they're promoted by all kinds of charity organizations, right? There are charities on love, kindness, charities on bravery, charities on spirituality, charities on forgiveness, etc. So these virtues are always promoted by social institutes. And all of virtues have their genetic roots, but they can also be nurtured by efforts. If something cannot be nurtured by efforts, then these are not virtues. They are not characters. They are talents. They are gifts. But they are not characters. Characters have to be able to be nurtured and grown by yourself. And finally, they are cross-cultural. For example, many people ask me why confidence is not in the character strengths. If you look at them, we got humility, right? Which is in the temperance. Okay, being humble is a character. Why being confident is not? Because being confident is actually only a character in the Western culture. In Eastern culture, for example, Chinese or Japanese culture, we don't think confidence is a good thing. We think, okay, if you are too confident, then you are too proud, and that's not good. So that's why confidence, pride are not in this character strength chart. Actually, if we match Chinese culture, for example, when we say cross culture, okay, take the example of China. What are the most important virtues of Chinese culture? If we look at the Confucianism virtues, it's benevolence. This is almost like humanity, right? And wisdom, same thing as wisdom. And also we value righteousness and fidelity. And this actually correspondent to courage and justice. And also we emphasize on propriety, right? The rituals and the rules. And this is similar to temperance. Transcendence, actually, we got first, we got Taoism and Buddhism virtues. They are very transcendent. And secondly, actually, Confucianism are pretty transcendent too, but they just don't emphasize it. But if you really practice Confucianism, for example, I see myself as a Confucianist. So I know that Confucianism is pretty transcendent. I can find the spirituality and the transcendence in Confucianism values. So as we can see, these character strengths are cross-cultural. They are valuable to everyone in the world, which means actually everyone in the world has these 24 character strengths. But the degree of the strengths are just different. Some people have a higher degree of this strength, and some people have a not so high degree of this strength. So if you want to know your strengths, the best way is to go to Marty Seligman and Chris Peterson's website. It's called AuthenticHappiness.org, and take the VIA survey of character strength there. But it will take a long time. It has 240 questions, so we're not going to do it now. But you are welcome to do it after this class, and I would actually suggest this as a homework for you to do. But we don't have time to do the survey, but we do have a time to contemplate, to reflect 5 questions. What strengths do you value most? What strengths do you like most? What strengths make you excited? And when you have chances, which strengths would you like to use? Which strengths do you learn the most quickly? And please then list 3 to 5 strengths that satisfy this criteria. For example, for me, these 5 strengths I like most, and they make me most excited, and I would love to use them. This love of learning, creativity, curiosity. I'm a scholar, I'm a researcher, so I'm very interested in reading, learning, and then create ideas, write my ideas, etc., and giving lectures. This is creativity too. And also I appreciate beauty and excellence. I'm a positive psychologist, so I admire other people. I can see strengths in other people, and I'm very optimistic. So I have a very high degree of a very high degree of hope. So could you please also take a pen and a paper and think about these 5 questions and find your strengths and then put them onto the chat area. All right, we have 5 minutes. Let's start right now. Okay, time is up. I can see that you guys are still posting your answers. A lot of people already posted. Good. Unfortunately, we run out of time, and I can see people are still posting your answers. But that's the 5 minutes for this exercise. If you feel that you need more time to explore these questions, you're more than welcome to do it at home after the class. So, but here's the key thing. I can see that many of you guys actually posted very good strengths. But it's difficult for people to remember that. Actually, maybe tomorrow when you ask yourself, hey, what are the 5 strengths I said I had in that class? Maybe you forget that too. So a better way to remember that is through stories, right? So next, I'm going to introduce a method called your strength story to kind of better make yourself and other people realize your strengths. So this means you tell a story that can best reflect your strengths. It doesn't have to be a story that's, designed or you made up. Just think about what are the moments that you were most proud of, that you think you fulfill yourself, that you think, okay, this is the best version of me. And then that is your strength story. For example, for me, what I did was several years ago when I first went back from the United States, back to Tsinghua University. And at that time in Beijing, I knew pretty much little people. I knew pretty much nobody. And that gave me a lot of free time after work. So I spent them online on internet and on TV and movies, but watching them on my computer, which is not good. They're not good for my eyesight, and they're not good for my psychological well-being, because I know that, as we said, the foundation of happiness is interpersonal relationship. So I need to connect with other people. But how can I connect to other people? I don't know anyone. So what I did was I posted on Weibo, the Chinese Twitter, that, okay, I can help other people. If you want, just let me know. And a lot of people actually came to ask for help. Those are the netizens, the Weibo users that I helped. Some of them actually don't even have a profile picture, but it doesn't matter. We talked, and I think I helped them. They thought since I'm a psychologist, they thought I'm a counselor. I'm not a counselor, so I cannot do psychological counseling for them. But I talked to them about, okay, actually, after we talked, I found you have the following strengths and you have the following psychological resources. Because most people don't realize what kind of resources they had. For example, besides character strengths, they also had the resources of relationships. For example, when I talk to someone, I would tell them, okay, looks like your parents really worry about you. That's a resource, right? Looks like even though you have a tough time, but your friends really support you. Looks like you have a good connection of classmates, etc. And also time is a resource. You are young. You still got a lot of opportunities to explore. You got time to figure out this problem. And also hope is a resource. Okay, you still hope to become better. That's better than, some people who give up the hope. They don't even want to give up. This is what we call today as 躺平, right? You just lie down and do nothing. They still want to become better. So these are their psychological resources. And I tell them, okay, use these psychological resources to make your life better. And I think, I helped them in some degree, and some of them become friends of mine. We still have contacts with each other sometime. And so, this is quite successful to me that, I first established interpersonal connections. And secondly, instead of I spend all my time in front of a computer, now I spend time with other people. If they are in Beijing, I invited them to the Tsinghua campus. There was no COVID-19 at the time, right? People can come in and we walked in the campus, which was very beautiful. Or I can make phone calls to them, and I typically walk when I make phone calls. So I exercised, I made interpersonal relationships, I'm becoming psychologically and physically better. But that's not the whole story. I not just help them, I ask them something for return. What is that? It cannot be money, right? So I ask them to help other people so that we can pass the good thing around. And so these are the first 4 people I asked. They also replied, okay, after you helped me, I helped those people. And actually, many of them helped more than 1 people, which was surprising. But it's also heartwarming because, I only asked them to help other people once. But, people actually love to be kind. When they are helped, they tend to help other people more often. It's almost as if the kindness was buried or hidden in their heart, but now they're ignited by me, and they started to help other people more. So that is really extra or addition reward of this mission of mine. And more than this, some people who I didn't even ask, they joined this kind of campaign, and they helped other people around. So this is really inspiring and really encouraging to me. And I think this ripple effect is way more powerful than I thought. So this is actually the most kind of proud moment of my life when I did that. So, and what strengths are in this story? Well, first, I think creativity, right? Because nobody think of these problems, these ways of, nobody thought of this campaign before, and I created it. I created this campaign to solve the problem of me lacking the interpersonal relationship and the physical movement. So this is creativity, and also my curiosity. I'm curious to other people. I would like to know, okay, what are the other people's life? What strengths do they have? How can I help them, right? And also the appreciation of beauty excellence, because I love to see strengths of other people. And hope. I always see that I'm always optimistic that we can solve problems as long as we have the resolution and also the scientific method to do it. So these are my strengths reflected in this campaign. Not only my top strengths, but also some strengths that are not so top. For example, love and kindness and social intelligence. So this is my strength story. We originally planned to do this strength story in the class. So everyone write down a story of yours, but we run out of time, so we're not going to do it. But I strongly recommend you do it when you get home, when after this class, think about, hey, what's the story that can best reflect my strengths? What is the story that I'm most proud of? And what strengths can I see in them? And then you will realize your strength better. Okay, so now let's get to the third part. Why? Why do we spend one class on character strength? Because science found that growing strength is better than fixing weakness. And we, of course, don't ignore our shortcomings, but you can avoid shortcomings by growing and using strengths. Of course, for serious, big problems, you still need to fix them. For example, if you're not honest, you lie all the time, or you are a drug addict, you have to fix these problems. But as long as all the big problems are fixed, you don't have to fix all the short weaknesses. You can concentrate more. You can focus on growing and using your strengths. So here are some research results. One of them is the Gallup study. So Gallup actually had a survey on about 20,000 employees from 34 companies of 7 industries in 29 countries. And they are investigating the relationship between leadership styles and performance. So the leaders can either focus on their employees' strength or weaknesses. It can be, okay, so for example, on their performance, they can say, okay, you did great last year. For example, a principal to a teacher, okay, your class ranked your class actually ranked number 6 last year, but this year it's ranked number 5. It's better. This is a praise on this teacher's performance strength. So the survey found that this teacher will likely have a 36% performance increase next year. But if the principal focuses on this teacher's weakness, for example, all right, you only ranked number 5 in the grade. It is not good. You have to be number 3, number 2, number 1. This is weakness. And then that means this teacher's performance will become even worse next year. It will be worse by 26%. And similarly, on the individual strengths and weaknesses, for example, the principal might say to the teacher, okay, so you're a good teacher. People, everybody said that you are very conscientious, which means, you have very good sense of responsibility and you always finish your work in time. Okay, then this teacher's performance will increase next year. But if the principal just criticizes on the teacher's individual weaknesses, okay, you are not a good teacher. You are not good at teaching. Students don't like your teachings. Then the performance will decline next year. So what leaders emphasize on to the employee actually passes a very strong message to the employees. Am I appreciated? Am I using my strength? Or am I actually using my weakness? That will have an effect on their next year's performance. So another survey found that managers who encourage their employees to use strengths are 86% more likely to succeed. That's a survey to over 2,000 employees. Another study that is even bigger scale on 300,000 employees. That's from 51 companies, over 10,000 teams. They found that employees who can use their strengths are 44% more likely to obtain customers and 48% higher in productivity. So you really need to do more in strengths. And strengths are very helpful to employee engagement. So one study found that if you randomly assign them to 2 groups, one is to have them use strength, the other one is the ordinary control group. As we can see, the strength group, which is represented by the blue column here, their engagement are much higher than those in the control group because they feel, okay, I'm using my strength. I'm doing what I'm good at. So of course, they will like what they're doing much more. So their engagements are much higher. And engagement is very important to the to productivity, because when employees feel engaged, which means they are willing to work extra time, even without pay, and they are very proud of their work. When they work, they are very their productivity is very high because they fully concentrate on the work, and they are willing to introduce this job to other people. So, for example, when their friends are looking for a job, they would say, "Hey, my job is great. Join us," because they are engaged. And these engaged employees just, use as we just mentioned, they just 躺平, they just lie down. They are just spending their time to get money, and nothing in the work interests them. Of course, engagement is very important in an organization, and also in education. So here is a new model of teaching called strength-based education. It measures students' strengths and encourages students to use their strengths. And the research found that the strengths, the students in the strength group, represented by the green column here, they have better academic performance. So they have better scores and better behavior and better engagement. So if the teachers see the students' strengths, they're less likely to cause trouble because they feel they are appreciated by the teacher, and they can already use their strength. So they are not forced and criticized by the teacher. They can do what they like most, so they will feel more engaged and do better in academic performance. And the teachers would say that the students who are in the strength-based education group, they attend the lessons more, they are less absent, and they are more attentive in the class. They don't gossip or chat in the class. They listen to the teachers, and they're 3 times more likely to answer questions and have discussions in the class, and more timely to turn in assignments. So this is why their academic performance is better. And same thing for parenting. This is a research done. This is research done by a group of scientists who assign parents into 2 groups. In one group, the strength group, represented by the blue column here, they actively look for their children's strengths and encourage their children to use them. As we can see, the behavior problems become less in the strength group. Sorry, the blue column is before the intervention, and the brown column is after the intervention. As we can see, the behavior problems is much less for strength-based parenting, and the parental pressure is much less too, but there's not much difference in the control group. So that's why strengths matter. But of course, we have to again emphasize that that doesn't mean we don't have to take care of shortcomings. If it's a serious shortcoming, that is like a hole in a boat. This hole, a serious problem, is at the bottom of the boat. So, for example, if you are a drug addict, this is like a hole at the place A here. You have to fix it. But if you fixed all these serious problems, or you don't have these serious problems, you have some small shortcomings. For example, sometimes you are a little bit lazy or a little bit laid back. You are not very tidy. So that's fine. You don't have to fix all the problems. You have to concentrate on for example, the how to make the boat move faster, which is your strengths. If a boat has no holes, but it doesn't have any motor to make it run faster, then it will not go any direction, right? It will just stay there, because this is like a person who has no shortcomings, but also no strengths. That cannot help this person's career or life. So we have to, find our strengths and use them. How to use them? At the end of this class, I'd like to give you 3 tips. First is to use your strength in a new way. So we all have strengths. And when you find your strength, you typically find them in the old ways that you are using them. For example, I have my strengths in research, curiosity, love of learning, and creativity. But I started to use them in my parenting. When I raise my child, for example, I make creative Legos with my kids. So that both my kids and I will enjoy this kind of things more. They would find more pleasure in playing Lego with me, and I will find pleasure too. And also, I bring them to museum so that I can learn from the museum and he can play in the museum, right? So this is how to use your strength in a new way. And for example, if your strength is love, you can, instead of, in addition to the old ways of loving, you can also try to express more, give people more hugs, touches, and write your love, express them, make phone calls to them, so that let people know you love them, not just do loves, but also express them, and spend time. Because, today we don't, most people are not, in a huge need of money. We actually need other people's time. So you make handmade gifts to other people, talk to other people, or play with them. For example, I used to hate playing mahjong and poker with my relatives, my family, my parents, because I think that's a waste of time. Okay, I'm a researcher. I'm not going to do those kind of childish things and stupid things. But now I changed. I realized, okay, this is actually time to exercise my love, right, to my family members, because they enjoy it. So I spend time with them and I enjoy that too. So this is a way to express your love and also kindness. You don't have to just help other people. Just by expressions, you smile to people, you praise them, you hold the doors when people come into elevator. That is kindness. And you can help other people out of their expectation. That's called surprise altruism. That's kindness too. And appreciation. You can appreciate more of the beauty. You can go to the mountains to explore the nature and look at the buildings, in China today or all around the world. There are a bunch of beautiful landscapes. See how different and how spectacular they are, and enjoy them, appreciate them, and of course, appreciate the arts. And appreciate other people. This is very important. When we say appreciation, it's not just appreciating beauty, it's also appreciating excellence. Wow, their strengths. It doesn't have to be people like Michael Jordan or Michael Jackson, those geniuses. Other people, ordinary people, they have strengths too. Try to find the strengths and appreciate them. So this is how to use your strength in a new way. And but sometimes we can't use strengths. It seems like we have to use our weakness. What can we do? You can use something called the strength recharge, which means, okay, if your psychological energy is exhausted by having to use your weakness, then you can recharge it by doing something you're good at. For example, I hate the reimbursement. You have to collect the receipts and put them in order, and especially it has to be in the format that the finance department of the university requires, which is a very very tedious, and I hate that kind of work. So what can I do? I usually just do kind of 30 minutes of reimbursement work and then stop and do reading for like 1 hour. And then I come back to do the reimbursement work again. So this way I can finally finish this reimbursement. Otherwise, I cannot even finish it. Because when I'm reading, I'm doing something I really love. So my energy level is recharged, and then I can finish things I don't like. But a better way to change the things you don't like is to use strength. Find opportunities to use your strength in things you hate. For example, washing dishes. This is an example that Martin Seligman gave us. He had many children, and washing dishes is a problem in his family. He asked his children to wash dishes, but children don't like washing dishes. So he measured their strengths, and he found that one of his boys has a strength of leadership. So he said, okay, let's have a dishwashing group or dishwash team. And you, the boy, is the team leader. So this boy became very excited about washing dishes. He actually became the most ardent advocate of washing dishes every day. So why? Because now he can use his strength of leadership. He can lead his sisters to wash the dishes. So now he really enjoys wash dishes. And I use this way too, like in parenting, as I mentioned, because first, I love parenting, but sometimes parenting is really exhausting. If you spend already like half day or even one day in parenting, this is really tiring. So what I do is, okay, let me try to use my strengths. I create new Legos, or I create stories and I read with my children. And then this will make me kind of feel, okay, first I'm recharged. And secondly, I feel, okay, I don't hate these things anymore. Actually, I enjoy more and more parenting. So this is how to use your strength in a situation that's not very friendly. And why do we encourage you to use your strengths? Because according to research, this is a random assigned research done by Seligman and his colleagues. So we talked about three good things last week. The placebo control group is to write things, good or bad, whatever, every day. And the black column, this is the experiment group. They use their strengths. And as we can see, happiness of the using strength group increases and their depression symptoms decreases. So I recommend you to use your strengths because that can increase your happiness and decrease your depression. Okay, that's it for today. And thank you very much for your listening. And now let's go to the Q&A part. Do you guys have any questions? If you have, please post your questions in the Q&A box. And okay, actually, I can see Erica actually had a question. Erica Woodland has a question posted in the chat area. As a boss of a startup company, I'm wondering, what should I do if some of my employees frequently miss the deadline I set? What can I do to